everyone. Hi everyone. A lot of people have been asking for landscape painting for a long time now. So I thought I could show you that. Also, a lot of people have asked for some kind of help with color pencils. So I'll try and do something in color pencil, in watercolor, and also with regular pencils. So, depending upon what materials you have at hand, you can enjoy landscape illustration, if not painting, with everything. So, as usual, I have a few landscapes in mind, but while people are gathering, I'd like to show you the few that I have done before, and I can help you make some of those. This was the journal that I had shared with you before. It's a very simple watercolor illustration, just a few washes and a few brush strokes to create this very simple landscape. Can be done within just 5 minutes. You don't need too much time for this. Then there was another one. This one, which is also pretty tiny. 11 size flat brush. I don't know how an 11 size flat brush looks, but let's see. It should work. You should be able to use it flat, and you can put it on its tip and then use it for straighter lines, and just on a corner to make whatever strokes you want to. So I guess flat brush will do. Don't worry about the washes. The best bit is they dry, and then you can go over it another time and another time. So wait till your washes dry. We'll go through some troubleshooting with washes if need be. And here's another of my Goa diaries from last year. Let's see which were the landscapes I made in this. This was an interesting one. Again, if you see, I focused a lot on drawing a little bit of detail in the foreground, but much of the background is just color, and the brain kind of fills out all the information needed. And here was an interesting one as well, on a page, on a spread, on a double spread. And we were at Bogmolo Beach when we painted this scene, so we could study how the colors changed, and we made this over, say, about 15-20 minutes, so that we could add in colors as we could see them change. Now this is all very, very basic illustration, not too much, not too complicated. Landscapes can be very detailed and very complex, and those look beautiful too. They can be a little overwhelming, so I like to start off with something that's just playing with color and a few brush strokes here and there, and trying to size up what a landscape means, so that we can start making more and more complex landscapes. Yeah, what's written below is Friday the 13th of December 2019. Oh, you live in Bogmolo? My God, wow, that's so cool. So I guess you would probably know this. Somebody stays in Bogmolo. This is the scene from Joetz's. We were sitting in Joetz's for lunch, and that's what we saw. And because we are right here, that's what we ate. I'm sure there's somewhere we have a little scene of Joetz's as well. And here I've just focused more on painting the landscape, but the detail of the store, of the restaurant, has just been drawn out in pen. Now, this calls for another journal flip through, but maybe today let's focus on the landscape, and if we have time in between our session when the paint is drying, I can show you a few more landscapes. Cool, so I think everyone's here. Let's begin. Okay, so I'm going to start you off with very simple landscapes, but I'm going to make them across this whole page, but I'm going to make them in what is called a thumbnail, because it's easier to manage and we can do multiples if we want to. So I have 3 options. I'm going to draw 2 which are horizontal, so those are landscape, but there's one that I'm going to make slightly larger, and it's going to be in portrait mode. And the size of the paper is A4, and for one of these I'm going to use a tape. So those of you who might have a paper tape like this that is adhesive but can come off easily, then you can make a long, I'll show you what fun this is also. I'm sure many of you might have seen this. So I'm just going to make a long rectangular box on one side with this tape, and this tape is going to act as a masking tape so that my illustration or my painting does not go beyond my intended area. Hi Shalomi, you made it. Thank you so much. We're painting Goa. What paper is this? This paper, there's a question, landscape of a church. Yes, I'm going to do a church. I'm going to do a couple of beach landscapes. This paper is just plain craft paper, and as you can see, I keep reusing this. I made this first, and promptly I went and did something else which I shouldn't have, so the second time around it's turned out much better. The name of the tape, it's just called paper tape. Actually, different places you get different kind of paper tape, but I get mine from my corner store. It's a Chinese label, and you get them in different thicknesses. You get them in 6 mm, 9 mm, and this is I think 1.3, 1.4 mm. Yeah, I'm going to be removing the comments in about 5 minutes. Washi tape can be used. Just check that the adhesive is not too strong, because we need to remove this afterwards. Sometimes if washi tape is very strong, it will tear the paper along with it. You need the tape to just be temporarily stuck. And on the other side, I'm going to make rectangles, but I'm going to round off the edges of the rectangles. So I'm going to draw these lines in pencil. I'm going to magnify this in a bit so everyone can see it. So I have made just the sides and I've not turned the corners. And after I made these, I can then turn the corners. It's a lot easier to do this rather than trying to draw a continuous line, because then this line goes off completely. So we're going to have 3 different ways of making a landscape illustration. One with tape, one with a border, and one without a border. So it's just going to be loosely hanging around over here. Yes, this paper tape does not absorb water. It's amazing. It's somewhere in between paper and clear tape, and it takes on the color of the color that we are painting. So it's not like regular sticky tape, which is plastic. And if you don't have tape, don't worry. That's why I'm showing you this. You can make the same thing, make a border with pencil, and we can then work with just that. You don't need anything more. So that's exactly why I'm showing you how to make a border, and then how to also make a landscape without any border at all. There's something called masking tape. If you use it, if it is usually very very sticky, the adhesive is very strong, so pull out a length of that tape and you can paste it on a piece of cloth, or maybe on your dress or your jeans or something, and keep doing that a couple of times so that the adhesive becomes a little weak, and then you can paste it so that when it gets wet, it does not get very excited. The adhesive starts becoming very serious about its job. But if much of it is removed, then when you take off the tape, it does not disturb your drawing. All right. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to make will be the landscape that I just showed you. I'm going to make it in a small size, so people who might not have a large size paper, you can just cut your paper in half, and let's make this. Just so you get a better view. The first thing to do is, let's assume that this is a real landscape. Tape picks up colored fibers from jeans, and that doesn't matter at all. That color is not going to run, but when you do that, the adhesive of the tape gets used up. So there's only few places where the tape will be sticky, and just make sure that it sticks along this edge, the inner edge of your illustration. Otherwise it'll just run through, and that won't be useful at all. Right, so whenever you're making a landscape, there are certain things that you must keep in mind, and I've made an illustration of what you must keep in mind. We just go over those points so that, and I'll put up this picture so you have an idea of how to plan a sketch. So don't bother with writing this down right away. So how to plan is, first you identify the frame. You figure out what part of the illustration you want to, or the landscape you want to paint. That's why people sometimes have a ready frame cut out of a paper, and you will hold that against a particular landscape, move it around to see how sorry, let me just do that. Okay, no comments for 15 minutes, and then I'll take your questions one more time. So you identify the frame, and then you identify where the horizon line is. So in this case, our horizon line, usually the horizon line is in line with your eyesight wherever you are. So our horizon line is somewhere here, and all of this becomes a foreground, all of this becomes the middle ground, and all of this becomes a background. Oops, I lost that page. And then you start placing the details in the mid ground, which is where our eye reaches first. Sketch out the secondary elements, like you've got these mountains, you've got a little bit of water here or there, and then you place the primary elements which are going to create a focal point. So either there's a boat, or maybe there's some water or something like that. So that is how the plan then works out, and you can get a landscape that looks like this. Now, I don't want to get too technical at this stage, because don't bother with remembering too much of this from a technical point of view. But remember that for landscape, firstly we need to have a horizon line. So I'm going to draw the horizon line right bang in the middle through this. I'm just making it a little easy for everyone. There are ways in which it's recommended to have a horizon line either below half or above half, but let's just keep it at half and keep life easy for us. Wait. Then I'm going to draw a row of trees. So again, divide the bottom half such that this is the bottom half, and just above that I'm just going to draw a little bit of a line where I'm going to have my trees, and my trees will go right up to about half of the top. So I'm just going to draw random lines, some big, some small, something like this, just to give me an idea of where all these are going to come. And then from the background I have a whole lot of trees. So if I make a V shape like that right in the center, that becomes just so predictable, and it's not wrong, but it's just something that might make it a little boring. So I will move my trees like that and create like a forest section in the midground, and my trees are going to be over here, my sky is going to be here, this is going to be paddy fields, and this is going to be water. And so my trees are going to be reflected in the water. I'm just making a few trees here because I don't want to, but you know what, let's not make all of them straight. Let's turn some on their side a little bit, or maybe add some more. So everything that's a reflection actually is a mirror reflection. Alright, now the colors I'm going to use are going to be very simple. I'm just going to use lemon yellow. I need to write this down. And this is mostly going to be washes. So you have lemon yellow and sap green and cobalt blue, cerulean blue. This is going to be the paddy fields. This is going to be the sky. A burnt sienna for the coconut trees. The bark of the coconut trees, and again sap green for the trees, and a sap green and cobalt blue for the forest. So SG plus CB for the forest. Okay, this is how I'm going to do it. My comments are off right now, so I can't get any feedback. 10 more minutes and I'll take feedback. All right, let's begin. Alright, quickly in watercolor. Watercolor this size should not take more than 10 minutes. Okay, here we go. Lemon yellow. And I'm going to have to clean up my palette a little bit. So I'm just putting a little bit of water. And I'm going to take my rag and just wipe it off. I don't need this color today. And although I have some green here, this is a nice dark green, so I don't want to mess with that. I'll probably use it for the forest in the back. I'm going to make something nice and light here. So here's lemon. Oops. Terrible. Anybody with OCD who's watching will stop watching if I don't take. I would have stopped watching. Yeah, this is good. Okay, and sap green. Now whenever you're mixing colors, don't make one big pool unless of course you need a large area to be covered. I usually keep them separate so I can keep dipping into one or the other pure color and keep changing how my illustration looks. So I'm going to be making this color in the paddy fields, but I'm going to keep a little bit of this color also to paint the paddy the water over here. I'm also going to make the, should I make that? No, I don't need to, not right now. Okay. So here's the paddy fields. Just a wash, and when I'm making a wash I'm keeping it loose, so I'm not going to make it too distinct, like just a flat wash. Although even that can be made, that is great too. And right on this, while this is drying, I'm going to make my sky. For the benefit of people who would not want to get too disoriented, I'm going to paint it this way, but feel free to turn your picture around, your book around, so that you can see what you're painting. And I'm going to start painting it very light over here, and I'm going to go over some of the what I've drawn as the forest. This is cerulean blue. I'm going to make it slightly darker along the top, and then I'm going to merge this with just water. A few blobs here and there can make it look very interesting. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that cerulean also along the bottom with some water just over here, and I'm going to make a few lines inward, because if this is going to be water, whatever we see beyond the edge of the water, to a certain extent the same exact proportion is going to reflect into the water. So that is where the planning of the picture comes in. Why people get scared of watercolor is because the planning required can seem a bit much. I'm going to leave a little gap and paint the water now in the same colors that I used for the paddy field. And I'm going to dodge and paint between what I painted as the blue. So this will already start looking like ripples of water as the colors merge. A second round of paint if needed in the paddy field. And we'll let this thing dry. Now below this I'm going to make a picture of a little chapel I found in Goa scene And I'm going to show you how you can do this in color pencil and still make it look interesting enough. You can use exactly the same markers. So I have a certain horizon line, and I have the chapel over here in the center, so which is just 3 lines. The front has there's a thatch roof in the back. Sorry, my proportions are a little off here. So just a few shapes. Whenever you're making landscape, unless you're going to make the landscape in pencil itself, avoid making too many lines. Also make the lines such that you are already employing the texture that you want. I'm going to draw some greenery here, so I don't need to make a flat line. I need to make it look like there's some greenery there. Just be patient, little bit. Yeah, now I think it should be unblurred. Just 4 minutes more and I'll start taking people's questions. And then I'm going to also draw my coconut palms. There is also a hill in the backdrop. Now the hill that I have in my image is really flat, and that tends to look really boring. So I'm going to change that a little bit, and I'm going to draw this as the foreground, and this is going to be the frame of my picture. So all of this is largely just negative painting, meaning we leave the chapel the way it is and paint everything around it. And in this case, again, I'm going to use the same colors more or less. So greens, blues, maybe a few blues here or there. And you can, with color pencils, my camera might just shake a little too much here. But with color pencils, you have to try and figure out how the texture of what you're drawing is. It's almost the same thing. We cannot color it flat. Of course, if you want to, you can, and it'll just look like an interesting graphic. But you can always color something like this quickly, because when you're traveling, you want to make your illustrations. I'm assuming that this is something that you would do when you're traveling, but when you don't have time, color pencils is a good about that. And with color pencils, you can go back and forth on it. These are also watercolor pencils, so I can potentially wash with water, and it can give me a different texture. So every time you're coloring with color pencils, you can keep changing the directions. With color pencil, the technique is to roll the pencil and to make sure that the pencil color goes into all the grooves. Now I'm going to make it a little deeper around where the chapel is so that it stands out. And then color right through. If you just do a coloring like this, also this looks nice. It may look a little graphic, but still it gets the point across. So our intention over here is to communicate a thought. And I'm going to do a base over here with a deeper green so that starts looking like it's in the background. It's a matter of just positioning your colors, how you want to put what color where and what story you want to say, so it starts looking like there is some kind of depth here. This is part of a tree here, so if you feel like it, you can also create the illusion of a tree. Color pencils can be really, really fun. Now this is negative painting or negative sketching, where you make the coloring all around your subject. Okay, I'm gonna put this aside, go back to the watercolor a bit, but let me take some comments if there are any for just about 10 minutes, and then we'll move to the other side. Alright, now this is done. I'm going to make it a little deeper. So this is me being very conservative with my wash. I can make it a little deeper now. So I'm going to do the same thing, the same color, maybe a more pigment than before. More green pigment if I want to, and add to the cobalt blue and sap green for the trees. If you want to smudge with pencil, I guess it's okay, but I'm not sure if it's really required, so you can check if you want to, if you really need it. Now I'm coloring the backdrop while my paint is still wet. The paddy fields are still wet, but I'm going ahead and coloring this, the forest area anyway, because if there's a little bit of merge that takes place, I think it'll look really nice. Now even in this case, if you feel like it, I've just gone a little over, but I can always leave a little gap and create the illusion of a tiny chapel over here as well. Just a negative, I don't have to do anything else. When you're painting, just look, pay attention to these edges, don't make them too regular. So some big, some small. The shapes should not land up looking like a texture. Am I doing practice or this is finished? This is going to be the finished picture. And I'm going to do a larger one on the right. Okay, so as you can see that there is some graduation of colors, and I'm going to use the deeper color now to also make some places I'm going to make the water. That's okay. I'm going to use a wash of burnt sienna for and maybe, yeah, I guess burnt sienna is fine. So I'm going to draw a little bit of a burnt sienna road, a sandy road that goes like that. Very often in Goa we see that they have these roads are built up on embankments, I guess, so that they remain unhindered from the rising and falling of the tides. Okay, what type of paper is good for watercolor painting? For landscapes, I think one of the best papers to use is handmade paper, because there is so much water that a handmade paper can take, that you can do a whole lot of layering and it looks beautiful. Also, it bleeds very nice. So this kind of bleeding that watercolor can do, you can get a great effect on handmade paper. Otherwise, there are specific watercolor papers which can be up to 300 GSM thick, which is a really, really thick paper. So on that paper again, it can have it gives you very nice texture. I'm really sorry if anyone feels I'm going a little fast. As usual, I want to do more than I have time for. It's usually my story of my life. So I'll try and do this a little slower also. Now all I'm going to do is drop these trees down, and as I'm bringing them down, I'm changing a few shapes maybe. So it's just with the tip of my brush, I'm pulling it downward. Just make sure that the base is a nice wide base. Don't make it too thin because that looks very unnatural. And as you can see, that's spreading into the wet paint. And while this is being painted, also make a few shapes like this from bigger size and closer together to further away in the water while you're making the trees, because your brush has the same color. So the next time when you're out in a landscape like that, especially where you've got water and reflections, sometimes you might have water lilies in this as well, maybe it would be a good idea for you to just see or notice these things in size, shape, proportion, placement, how all this works out. I'm so sorry, I'm going a little fast. Really sorry. Okay, let me slow down. Let's leave the big painting for now, and I'll do that and put it up in a while. I'll make a video of the larger picture, the one that we've taped, so that you get to see it, but you can enjoy this process and I can help you out with your questions also. Alright, now let's make all these trees are bald right now, so let's make their hair. I'm working on my notebook. This is a 130 GSM book that I use all the time. It's not ideal for landscapes because the paper does warp. It's all going to be very warped up. But I prefer this because I can make my books out of this paper. As you can see, all the papers, all the sheets are warped wherever I've used watercolor. So it becomes a little undulated, but I like that I can make a 50-page book out of this, which I might not be able to make off a thicker paper. Alright, so now on this, now when you're making the leaves, the palm fronds, you can actually just make them like this. Just start with the tip of your brush and just press it and then pull it down. So I'm going to make it a little faster, like this. And you can make them like that, and just a few lines here. So you don't have to sit and make each and every little thing. That sometimes can make the picture look too formal and take away from the looseness of your landscape. And obviously all of them are going to be different sizes and shapes. Some can be long, some can be tall, some can be short, some can have darker leaves, some can have, all of them can have different numbers of leaves also. Now as I'm coming to this chap on the right, I'm going to add a little more blue to the sapling so that the palm fronds are visible. Okay, sorry, comments off again, people. Okay, I like that there is a monitor to the group. That way, in case I forget, I'm reminded. Thank you so much. Okay, so already you can start seeing that it's creating a fair illusion of, well, you can definitely tell that these are palm trees, that these are probably paddy fields, that there seems to be some kind of greenery on the outside, on the back, the blue sky, and water in the front. So we've done justice to that landscape. At the bottom you can always, I'll show you a little bit of lettering that you can do. Now if the sketch is a particular tone, this is all very light, not too many washes, not too much black pen, no black pen at all, then I normally would recommend also writing the details in pencil. So you can write Goa landscape. And for those of you who enjoy putting up your sign on your work, I'm going to recommend to develop a signature that can go with the picture. So if you do your bank signature, and especially somewhere in the composition, it can, first of all, it can come across as very amateur, and second is that it could, unless you've thought of the composition before, which includes your handwriting, I feel sometimes it looks really forced. So let's do, we have to write the word Goa landscape and today's date. That's usually what one must do. So let's do, I'm just writing this very tall, and maybe I can write Goan landscape. It's just regular capital letters, but just made really long and drawn very far from each other. And as you notice, I'm not being very particular about the baseline. Some letters are taller, some letters are shorter. If one letter goes up, then I balance it out with the next letter. And now here I can start writing the date from the other side so that I can balance the space between the two. So I can leave enough space from here, and I can write, this is a superpower if you can develop this, is writing from right to left, because we generally cannot budget spaces like that. And I think today is the 28th, and just make a dot in the middle so everything looks well balanced. Now I'm a little anal about balancing everything, so I prefer that my lettering balances out in the composition. I've taken the same color that I had for the leaves before, that's sap green and cobalt blue, and I'm just going over some of the lower branches so that they look like they have some dimension. There's some light and shadow coming up. And a little bit of burnt umber. Now these are the two colors. Burnt sienna was used before, and now I'm using burnt umber in some places so that I get a little definition. This the trees are just getting lost otherwise. Just on one side, that's usually enough. There must be enough contrast in your pictures. if you don't have enough contrast, the picture looks a little wishy-washy, understandably so. So that should do it, at least as a first sketch. And now while I'm making the color pencil sketch, because it's just going to be me coloring with color pencils, I don't know if I need to explain that much. I will take comments if you have any questions. Okay. Okay, great. I'm making the sky now for the color pencil. What I normally do with color pencil is I sketch in any one direction first. So this is maybe at say 45 degrees to the baseline, and then I will go in the opposite direction so that it becomes a little deeper. The science behind the color pencils is that when you go in one direction, you will deposit the color in some of the grooves on the paper, and when you go in the other direction, you go ahead and deposit on the other remaining grooves in the paper. Now, because we don't have a border over here, you can always make a nice texture that can create some tension in a way, but add more interest. I'm really sorry about the shake. I'm trying to not shake the frame as much as I can. That's because this requires a little bit of pressing. My gentle table can't handle it. A little bit of drama also helps. So by drama I mean in some places you have really dark pencil and some places very light. You ought to avoid making a straight line anywhere. So if anything is coming in a straight line, try to at least make it a little rounded. How I put up my signature? Yeah, I don't sign my work, especially on the front. I don't think it's necessary. If the picture is good enough, I'm happy. And if I'm required to sign, I usually sign it on the back. I don't think the signature needs to be more prominent than the picture itself. It's more about the art than the person who's made the art. It kind of reduces the pressure, because if I say that I've made something, the pressure on me is higher. But if I can just say, okay, I was blessed to have this come out of me today, but there's no guarantee tomorrow, I can enjoy the art process a lot more. So what I'm doing now with the color pencils is changing the texture slightly. As you come into the foreground, you can start seeing more details of plants or foliage or whatever. So I might be able to draw some grasses here, but drawing the grasses in the back makes no sense. I just have to draw an overall thing. I'll sign this. I'll sign the color pencil sketch, so you get to see how I think it should be good. But again, it's just very personal. I do not want to impose my taste on anybody, but it's just an opinion that when you're making that signature, you can find a prettier way to make it. Now again, when I'm making the tree over here, I'm not going to color the whole tree dark green. I'm just going to color the bottoms slightly, because that's where the dark part of the trees would be. Even in this midground, this is a bush, but I'm going to make a few sections dark over here, so then it creates that illusion. And now with the dark blue pen instead of a black, I'm going to make some details in the chapel. Finally give it the shape that it needs. And I enjoy making a little bit of detailing for my buildings. So if there is a specific shape for the roof, I'll spend a little extra time on that. A little bit on shadows. You can also make this in gray if you want to, and a little bit on these things that stick out. So try and make that shape. There's usually a crucifix on the top, so try and make that, because it's a very gentle detail, but it communicates a very nice feel about how one can receive your picture. Otherwise it just this can just look like a barn. Okay, stopping comments again. Too many emojis coming, so now everyone can see it better. Last bit, we just have another 6 or 8 minutes to go, so I'm just going to show you briefly how this is done. There are some doors and windows here which have a very peculiar shape, and as you see, when I come to the bottom, I don't make it flat. I will go with the whatever shape I want to create of the greenery that is at this point. And I'm also editing this building. It does not have 3, it has I think 5 windows, but just for the sake of my symmetry, I'm converting that into 3. And same thing here. Now I'm sure the moment you see something like that, everyone just remembers Mario. I think he was a master in minimizing Goa to just a few lines here and there, and it was just fantastic. Right, so this is our chapel more or less done, but we have to have coconut palms. So not from the ground, I'm going to pull out the coconut palms from a little higher. Obviously this is from behind the chapel, and maybe a couple here, maybe one here. Again, I'm using my imagination for some of these. And here too, instead a lot of people might be tempted to draw each and every one of those fronds, but you can just create a texture like that, and that should be good enough to convey. Keep looking at your subject though, so you can see how it is shaped. And some more here. As with watercolor, again with color pencil, I generally tend to, not that I use color pencil much, but I really like it. Whenever I get a chance to do it, I love making color pencil sketches, which is very rare. But I like mixing colors in this as well. You don't need to keep them just one color, it just looks very boring. And then go back into the background so that you can create more drama. You can use a little more blue. Now when you use colors in combination with each other, they change, their personality changes. So sometimes they look really dull, but in the right combination they can start looking good. And because I've used blue here, maybe I can use a light blue to create some shadows. This can also be done in gray or black. And I will create the shadow of the tree on top here. That fellow was supposed to be dark green. Little off balance, but I guess a 10-minute sketch, that's as much as possible. And a lot more detail can come over here in a darker color so that your chapel does not look so alone and scary like Days of Pioneers. And it's, I guess, more or less done. Um, you can add some more shadows from here maybe, and maybe something like this so that it looks like it's the shadow of the tree, and that should be good too. Okay, last 5 minutes. Comments on. I might just add a little more on all sides to make this a little filled up. I think a little more is required over here to make the composition look interesting. And now for the signature. What signature should I make? Let me think about it. Yes, signature. So I would make the signature somewhere over here, if at all, and sorry about that. This is the signature, so it's an A and D and ITI, so it can very well be misread as Niti, but let me just turn this around. So I did this sometime. And this is our accomplishment for the day 35. Let me just establish this. Yeah, we can use watercolor over watercolor pencils. I've been trying that a little bit, so sometimes it works, sometimes you just need to plan well. Thank you. Yes, all good. Okay, maybe continue the same thing tomorrow, maybe not, let's do something else. But I'm going to make the second landscape on this, and I'll make a video which you can see it on IGTV. It's going to be more or less the same thing, so you will probably be able to see how I am planning and positioning this and put it up soon. I hope everyone's happy. I'm so sorry if I rush too much. Maybe I should find some way to do a slower session. And thank you again for visiting. Please start putting a date on your works, and also the day that we are at today. I think it's day 35 of the lockdown. So my plan is, and I'm hoping that I can do this for a really long time. I don't want to say anything because I could just easily jinx it. Most welcome everyone. I'm very grateful that you all showed up. This is just amazing. Let's see what I can do tomorrow. Obviously, please send me suggestions, what you would like. I already have a whole page of suggestions from everyone, and I'll try and add to that. So bye for now, and I will see you